Welcome back, YouTube. It's been a while. I posted a few shorts, but was on a long work trip, just got back, and this is a combination of yesterday, a little bit of yesterday afternoon's work, and some work this morning. There was supposed to be some video this evening, but been having a lot of GoPro issues, SD card failures, and then for whatever reason, all the stuff I did with the wing ribs and everything this afternoon recorded as a whole bunch of time lapse, so all I've got are thousands of stills. I might throw those up at some point, but for now you're just going to miss out on some of that. But there's other wings, there's more to come. So this one, starting out with working on the right wing tie down. So you can see the tie down assembly right there in the foreground, just laying on the bench. You gotta make sure it's the right length, and then you have to locate it on the spar. It has no holes in it right now, so the plans give you a spot to drill and measure one locating hole, and from there you clamp it in place and use the main spar as a drill guide and drill out the rest of the holes. There are also two spacer blocks. You can see one there laying next to the die grinder that you have to fabricate from some flat bar stock. They've got a big lightning hole, a 1-inch lightning hole in the middle of them, which I just did that over on the drill press with the step bit, then cleaned it up. And then they end up with nut plates that get riveted between that tie down and those spacer blocks, and then the whole thing gets bolted to the spar. Something I did not pay too much attention to early on, and I don't have video of it later, those spacer blocks are meant to fill that gap. You can see those reinforcement bars on the spar there between the spar and the web. Those spacer bars are supposed to fill that gap when the tie down goes across it. And later on you'll see the reason for that is the holes that go through it and the nut plates are so that the aileron bell crank brackets from the other side can bolt to that. Well, the bar stock I got to make these spacers out of is supposed to be 0.187 thickness, and mine actually measures closer to 0.185. A couple thousandths difference doesn't sound like a lot, but it was enough so that when that tie down gets bolted to the spar, like you see it sitting there, there's still enough of a gap that those spacers can just slide around. And I figured out later on that when I put the bolts in for the bell crank brackets and tighten them down, it would want to pull that really thin spar web material in to fill in that gap and kind of deform it. Pretty sure that wasn't the intent of those spacers. So I found some thin leftover trim material I had from the empennage kit, and I cut spacers for the spacers. So now they fit snug in there like they're supposed to, and when I bolt the aileron bell crank brackets down, I don't have to worry about it deforming the thin spar material or possibly causing a stress crack from those being over tightened later on. So right now I'm just getting that whole thing located and getting the holes drilled through the spacer blocks as well as the rest of the tie down bracket. There's a lot of stuff that happened off camera. Like I said, some of it was camera issues, others were literally just late at night. I almost went to bed, and that's when I had the aha moment about the spacers, so I went out there and fixed it. There's another mess up, sort of a mess up I guess, that I made towards the end of the day and I fixed at night, and then you'll see the correction in the morning. So, putting everything together, I'm clamping it in place. Ideally, those clamps should have held those spacer blocks tight, sandwiched between the tie-down bracket, but because they're so loose in there, they don't actually hold them in place. I've also discovered over the last day and a half, 2 days, I need a lot more clamps. Various kinds of clamps. Not near enough clamps to do everything I need to do. So now I'm digging out the nuts and bolts, washers, and everything else that's going to attach all of this. Oh, and an update for anybody that's following along with the 2 right spar drama. I contacted Vans today, and they will be shipping out my new left spar by the end of the week. So hopefully I'll have it next week sometime, which is good because the more work I do on the right wing, the worse I feel about having to just do it all over again on the left wing. I really would like to be doing these together. That way, while I figure stuff out, it's fresh in my mind and I can move on to the other one. Downside of that is if I make a mistake on one, I'm liable to make it on the other one before I catch it, but those are the risks. Now there I was having issues with my countersink cage. After doing all the countersinks on the spar, the lock nut was firmly locked in place. Took a lot of persuasion to get that thing loose. And I'm just countersinking those spacer blocks because the rivets that hold it to the tie down end up mounting between it and the spar. They don't go through the spar itself. So I'm just getting all of that riveted together now. Just some really long but flush rivets. And the idea there is if you ever have to change the nut plates later on, or spacers or anything like that, you can just unbolt that entire tie down assembly and work on it outside of the plane, because there will be an access plate right there on the wing where I can get to all of that still. So now I am bolting that thing down, and the mistake I have made here, and I don't figure this out until I go back out there to deal with the new spacers later on that night, is I got everything cleaned up and ready to go, and I forgot to primer it. So I put it on, I torqued it, you just saw me apply torque seal to it. I wish I could say that was the only time I put that on there, but it wasn't. So here we are the next morning. You can see I went out in the middle of the night and realized my mistake of not priming the part. So I took it back off, primed it, made the new spacers, which I didn't really show on camera, or the spacer shims, I guess. Put that thing back on and torqued it back down again and reapplied torque seal. So now I'm busting out the aileron bell crank brackets with the normal Vans kit. These are just some stamped steel parts that are powder coated, and then they have bushings in them. I elected to buy the Sky Designs ball bearing aileron bell crank kit. It's a really, really nice kit. Very well made machined parts with some nice ball bearings in it. So there's some finished photos for you. Tie down, all tapped and ready to go, and there's the bell crank brackets. I don't know if they were worth it in the end, or if I really need them, or if I'm going to notice the difference, but it was something I wanted. It was on my list, and I knew I needed to get it when I was working on the wings, so there they are. If they don't work out, I still have the Vans ones I can put in later on. That one that was longer is a mounting bracket for the aileron, the roll autopilot servo. That's what I'm trying to say. Which hopefully I'll be adding before too long. I plan to try and get everything that goes in the wings purchased and installed before I close out the bottom of the wings later on. So now we're on to the rear spar. These are all the components for the right wing rear spar laid out there. It's just a really long Z channel and then a bunch of reinforcement plates. got everything marked, made sure I knew exactly which one was which. Now the confusing thing, and you see me refer to the plans a lot, and I cut a lot of it out. There was a lot of me staring at those plans, trying to figure stuff out. Right now I'm measuring for where the doubler plate goes. I think it's like 50 3/4 inches. But the reason I'm looking at it so much is there is a mind-boggling amount of different sizes, lengths, and types of rivets that go into these in various places and at various times. And right now, there's only a few rivets that go in now. The rest will go in as I add ribs or aileron brackets, things like that. And it's really confusing reading those callouts on the plans. There's also some machine countersinks that need to be done to one of the brackets, and I wanted to make sure I put them in the right spot. But right now, I've just got them mounted because they come blank. You have to get them positioned where they're going to go, and then you use the spar as a template, drill out the holes. That part's pretty easy. And then there's the whole top and bottom edge of that piece are number 40 size holes that are ultimately all going to get dimpled because the skin will end up there. And those reinforcement brackets have an overlap, so I had to make sure I drilled those out as well. You can see that big oblong shaped hole in the middle. That's going to be for the aileron push tube later, which the hole needs to be matched in this doubler. So I marked it out using the unibit to hog out a good chunk of the material. And then I decided the safest way to go from here was just finish it off with files. It's relatively soft aluminum. Those are fresh, brand new files, so they made pretty short work of it. And now I'm just cleaning it up. I'll slow it down so you can see the final product and the weird shape that hole ends up. But it was a perfect fit. Now I'm trying to take some of the bend out of that big doubler right there. Those big, thick stamped pieces, when they cut them, they always seem to end up with a really bad bow in them. So I was just trying to kind of force some of that back out. And the Clecos will pull a lot of it out, but I don't like the idea of it having memory and constantly trying to pull against the rivets that are holding it down either. And you see me scrolling through some videos for some expert help, because again, I know there's some serious gotchas in here, and at this point I'm fairly confused by some of it. I'm just going through doing the parts that I absolutely know I can do, which is drilling out the holes and final sizing them. I remember Chris had a couple of issues with the same thing, so I'm rewatching some of his videos and even managed to get, like I said, some expert advice. Which was a lifesaver, because I'm pretty sure I would have made some boneheaded mistakes as well if I didn't do all of that. The other thing that adds to all this confusion, and I was starting to allude to earlier, is the plans all show the left wing. That plan you can see in the background, that is a skeleton of the left wing. I am working on the right wing. There is no set of plans for it. You use the left wing plans, and you just have to keep remembering that everything you're doing on the right wing is a mirror image of the left wing, not an exact image. Which means it has the same part numbers, but they're in a reverse order, or they're mirrored in their direction. Real easy to get very confused very quick about which way is which. So those thick doublers are going to make it impossible to dimple the top edge of that flange right there. So right now you final size drill them and dimple them now, which I think I forgot to deburr them, which is why you saw me go there after the fact. But dimple them now, that way when I rivet this thing on, it won't be a problem. That's the idea anyways. And now I am using the deburr tool to machine countersink the end doubler. The very end holes of that are going to end up underneath an aileron bracket later. So those rivets that hold that rib on through there have to be flush rivets because they're going to get covered up. So rather than use the machine countersink, just using the deburr tool, and I was just sneaking up on it, using a rivet as a gauge to make sure I had it all right. So now it's same as everything. Put the apron back on because it's getting dirty, scuffing up the aluminum, deburring the holes, and then I'll get it all cleaned up off camera and taken outside and hit it with some primer. Which reminds me, I think I need to buy more primer. I'm going through an awful lot of that. So there I was looking at the plans again because I realized that those top holes need to be dimpled where they recess into that top edge. So I went ahead and just did it now so that I can get everything painted and I don't have to worry about trying to figure it out later. It did deform one of them a little bit because those bends are a little greater than 90 degrees, but I just used the hand seamer and coursed it back and got it back into shape, and it nestled back in there really nice. So now I'm getting clecos in, and like I said, there's a lot of holes that do not get rivets in it. So all of those doublers down to my right, everywhere you see a cleco is someplace that a rivet should not end up. This one, I'm spacing the clecos out, but I'm also putting clecos in specifically where I won't put rivets. The straight up and down lines of 4 there you see, those represent rib locations later on. Now, if I did accidentally rivet them, it won't be the end of the world. It just means I got to drill them out. But I'm trying not to do that, especially these because they are very, very long rivets. So just getting them all set and double checking to make sure I got the rivet squeezer set up right. And by the end of this, I had it all completed, riveted together. Happy to say there was only one rivet that gave me problems I had to drill out, and that was on the far end. And then I started working on rib prep and getting those sorted out for both wings, which I did do. I'm going to show you some pictures of some completed projects here. There you go, all done. And I thought I had the camera rolling, but like I said, it took a bunch of stills instead, so you're left with this little teaser for the next video. There's a right wing skeleton partially together, just so I can final drill it and then work on those ribs. And then I threw it in the stand because I could, and then I took it back down because it's sagging. But anyways, hope you enjoyed it. Be back for more next weekend. See you on the next one.